Welcome to the Breech Birth podcast. I'm Sasha Hopkins, private midwife, breech birth educator, and your host. This is a space to hear the real, raw, and powerful stories of women who have experienced breech birth in all its layers. Each episode features honest conversations with women who've experienced breech firsthand, offering insight and reflection. This podcast was born from the knowing that these stories need to be heard to inform, connect, and reclaim the story of breech birth. Whether you're navigating breech birth yourself, supporting others, or simply curious, welcome and thank you. Hi, Marley. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sasha. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
So, to give our listeners a bit of context, could you share with me what year your baby was born?
Yes, 2024.
Where you're located?
I'm in Adelaide in South Australia.
What kind of care did you receive during your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum?
I went through a private midwife, so all my care was mostly at home.
And how many weeks were you when you birthed your baby?
I was 40 weeks when I had my daughter.
And did you have a vaginal birth or a caesarean?
I had a caesarean with her.
Awesome. So before you jump into the story, would you like to share a little bit of background about yourself to give the listeners an idea of who you are?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Marley. I work as a doula as well, so I'm quite immersed in the birth and pregnancy and postpartum world. I live in the Adelaide Hills with my husband and my two children. So I have a 4-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. So yeah, absolutely love it up here. Lots of space and nature and just beautiful life up here.
Amazing. So you've had a child before your breech baby. Do you want to give us just a little bit of context and background of what your experience was like and the kind of care you had? Because often that tells a bit of a story of like how you chose your next journey.
Of course, yeah. So in 2021, we were lucky enough to get pregnant quite quickly and just so new to that world of pregnancy and motherhood. So didn't really know what to expect and honestly didn't really give a lot of thought or consideration of what model of care, I suppose. So public sounded fine for us, and that's the model we went through. So we didn't have a assigned midwife. It was just whoever was on the day. Our appointments could be quite late and long. It's not a very personalized care, but in the same sense, it's, we're so lucky that we have the option of free healthcare here. So yeah, we were happy with that. We didn't really feel like we wanted to go down the private model, or we just weren't really sure of what to expect or anything like that. Had my baby through the public system. It wasn't a great birth. I think it was that sort of textbook long first labor. But I really didn't do any type of education or really go into it with any preconceived ideas. And I do take responsibility for that in some way, because I do think sometimes as first-time mums, we don't want to hear it. We think that the less we know, the better. But I really learnt my lesson after that birth. So, that was not the best birth, but I learned a lot from it.
Vaginal birth?
It was a vaginal birth, yeah, with forceps. So,
okay.
Yeah, quite a hectic birth, I would say.
Yeah, understandable. And so the time frame of before you planned your next, had you start to think what that next journey would look like before you fell pregnant, or was it kind of we're in it now, let's work out what we're doing? What did that look like at the beginning?
Yeah, I think when we talked about our next baby, in that time frame between my first son and getting pregnant, I'd become a doula, which was such a journey in itself, really learning about birth and what I wanted and what I saw out of other births and what inspired me. So after a couple of home births that I went to, I knew that that was the path I would like to go down if I could. So we had definitely discussed that prior, and yeah, getting a private midwife was really a no-brainer for us when it came to our next baby and just a bit more continuity of care.
Yeah. And had you met your midwife before you fell pregnant, or did that come after?
No, I hadn't. I had known about the SA Private Practicing Midwife Association, so I just contacted them, and she was the first one I spoke to, and I felt comfortable and connected with her. So she felt like a really good pick for us. She's quite evidence-based, has quite a scientific mind, so it was a nice mix of holistic care alongside really evidence-based and understanding birth and the body in its entirety. So yeah, she felt like the right pick for us.
Great. And what did your pregnancy journey look like with her and just overall well-being of yourself?
It was horrendous.
Okay.
I still am shocked the difference it was from my first. My first was a bit of nausea the first trimester and then fine, absolute fine. Felt great for most of my pregnancy. With my daughter, I was violently sick from 6 weeks, basically up till I gave birth. It
Mm,
was a really emotionally taxing time. You are just constantly looking for connection with other women that understand what you're going through because it's really hard to explain that feeling of sick. You say you feel sick, or what does that mean? It's like, it's just this feeling of just complete exhaustion, nausea. I couldn't eat. And it really impacted my mental health because my poor son, got such a small percent of what I could offer at that time. I would be in bed a lot. My husband had to take basically full-time care of him. And he even still references that time. Like, my son is, he remembers me vomiting out the car and the amount of times I'd have to run to the toilet. Like, it was a lot. I could never control my vomiting. And because of my pelvic floor after my forceps birth, I would then pee myself. So it was just a lot. And I was very excited to get to the finish line. But having that continuity of care and not having to leave from my appointments really helped during that time. My midwife was amazing. But yeah, my mental health and physical well-being definitely took a toll during that time.
yeah, I can imagine. Did you end up needing any fluids or anything in pregnancy for that to help you get through?
I didn't end up getting to that point. I probably should have on reflection. I think I'd soldiered through a lot. I just thought, okay, just one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. I probably never got to the point of like full dehydration, but I couldn't keep much down. Like, I reflect on the food and like liquid I had at that time. It was cordial, peach iced tea cordial, and like frozen Coke, plain soup. I cannot believe that you can form a baby based on that nutrition, because that wasn't my best nutrition I've ever had in my life. So the fact that she's here and she must have taken literally everything from me. So I was not well.
Yeah. And so at what point in your pregnancy did you discover that baby was breech? Was it through your midwife feeling your tummy? Did you have an ultrasound? What did that look like?
So at around 38 weeks, she came over for an appointment, and my son was there, and we were just on the couch and she was feeling around. And it wasn't like, oh no, she's breech. It was just like, oh, I think baby might be breech. And I don't think I really processed what that meant at that time. To me, I was like, oh, okay, she'll move and all will be fine. And then she said, I think maybe go get a roadside sort of ultrasound just to confirm, which I did, which is what I loved about having that continuity of care. Is she could then organise that for me. I didn't have to wait 3 days. She could make it work. And so I did that, confirmed she was breech. So from 38 weeks we knew, and then we started obviously having to make some quick decisions on what we wanted to do next.
And so what happened from there? Did you do anything to try and shift baby? Were you offered ECV? What did that look like?
Yes, so I ended up having an ECV a couple of days later, which was unsuccessful. And I think I knew it would be in my mind. The stories I had looked at were mostly ECVs done prior to 38 weeks. So I didn't go in with high hopes, but obviously it was very disappointing. And then I was offered a vaginal birth or a caesarean with the obstetrician that I talked to at the time. And I, for some reason, just spat out cesarean. And I think I was just trying to protect myself a little bit. So I had that ECV. And then after that, I'm a talker. I need to talk about things a million times to process them. So a couple of days later, I said, maybe we should try again for another ECV. So we ended up booking another one in, but subsequently cancelled that a couple of days again after, just during the emotional processing. I think I said, what's the point? I don't think this will work, and I don't want to do anything with the baby or risk anything else. If it didn't work the first time, the chances of it doing the second time. So I tried the holistic methods, with chiropractors and that type of thing. But it was quite clear. Yeah, it was not going to budge.
Yeah. And so you were still set on having a cesarean after, because it sounds like you went a bit back and forth around the ECV. You were still, this is what I'm doing.
I was very, very back and forth. So during that time, I probably knew in my heart a home birth vaginal breech was not for me, purely for the point of, I felt I couldn't take that responsibility on. My private midwife, although super experienced and amazing, had not done a vaginal breech birth before. And I think that really impacted my feeling of confidence. I think she actually would have been fine. She's done the training, but I confirmed, okay, well, there's also that on top. The home birth quickly sort of went. the next decision was, okay, well, would I have her in hospital and have a vaginal breech at hospital, which I was definitely open to the point that we arranged a meeting with the hospital to chat. The first time it went terribly. I don't know why this doctor got assigned this, but it's like he was doing rounds and he was like a junior doctor. He wasn't going to become an obstetrician, so I don't really know why he was set up for the appointment. But, he popped on Google and put up the Frank Breech baby. I'm like, well, I know what she looks like. We're further ahead than that. So what I was looking for was consultation of whether that would be something I would be allowed to do or supported to do, I suppose. So that appointment went nowhere. We ended up having a growth scan to see her head size and her body and all of that type of thing, which did then come back that she actually had quite a large head size, estimated head size. Based on that information, we then had another consultation with the head of obstetrics at the hospital I ended up birthing at, and it was not a nice appointment. I was not supported. It was basically like, oh, we definitely support breech, but not you. And I think if you are constantly told that you're not supported, it's hard to then I'm not like a F the system kind of like it gets to a point where that really played a part into my decision making. Well, if I'm going to go there and everyone's going to say, oh, that's that girl that went against what we said, that doesn't make me feel safe to birth with those people. So after that appointment, I really had to sort of come to terms with the fact that I was going to have a cesarean, which was so far from what I had wanted. And I don't say I was like cornered into it, but I do feel like I didn't have a lot of choice. And it's easy for people to say, oh, you could have just rocked up in hospital. But again, like me feeling positive and supported is a huge part of how I think the birth would go. So when you feel like that's not going to happen, yeah, it didn't make me feel like I had a lot of choice but a cesarean.
Yeah, you need to feel safe. And if you don't feel that prior, it's going to be hard to feel that when you're in labour as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And so did you book a cesarean? Was that the plan that you book an elective cesarean?
Yeah, so after a lot of back and forth, those days I spent at home just looking at vaginal breech, like, do I do it? Do I just rock up? What do I do here? I still probably didn't accept defeat until the very end, if I'm honest, even though I said to them cesarean, I don't think really I had accepted. My husband ended up taking me out for lunch once because he could really see the stress I was under and how heartbroken I was. And I think he just said, let's make a decision together and let's stick to it and let's make it the best we can. So we did end up choosing to have a cesarean on our sort of 40-week mark. And there's something crazy about having a birth plan. And I know that births can go differently, but I guess you're so used to the birth going in a different path during labour or the birth, not sort of 2 weeks prior. So it's like you've gone 8 months of expecting. I'd set up my home birth space. I was so excited. I'm in the birth world. So sort of everyone knew that's what I wanted. And then to go from like a physiological home birth to an elective cesarean was a huge jump, and it took me a lot to get my head around. So booked in for that day. And then between that time, we obviously had some sort of consultations in terms of like the post-surgery appointments you need at the hospital. And I actually had written a letter to the staff explaining my situation and why I felt so devastated about it, just to try and gain some control out of a really uncontrollable situation. And again, it just really shows in hospitals it's who you talk to, because she sort of looked at me like, what's the problem here? So 40-week mark, we were as ready as we could be, I suppose.
Did your private midwife have credentialing, so admitting rights?
No, in SA, there's actually only one midwife that has admitting rights. So I hope that changes. However, she did end up at my cesarean. That's
Great.
not normal. That's not policy, of course. But with my letter, and I think I sort of became known because we were a bit loud, I suppose. There were probably things that I was allowed, and I was very thankful for that. Having her there was, really great.
Yeah, I just want to let a lot of women know listening that it is achievable. I've had a few clients achieve this. So they've had their partner and myself as their private midwife physically present for the cesarean. And in that setting, a lot of the time, the babies had to go to the nursery, because that's why we've ended up in that setting. And so dad often goes with the baby, and then mum's left alone with complete strangers. So this actually gives her a support person, because you were two separate entities. You were both deserving of having your own support person. So I think that's really important for women to know that it is possible, and you do hold the cards a lot of the time in that setting. You can request or demand your person or people.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. You can advocate for certain things that you want and make it known. They try and make things difficult at times, but it's not always as easy as just, telling them what you want. But if you speak up enough and make it very clear, yeah, it's not impossible. So I wrote a letter. I said I really wanted my private midwife there. I wanted skin to skin straight away. And that was really supported. Just for people that don't know, it's actually the anaesthetist that sort of makes the rules of the room, which I wasn't even aware of. So I was so set on
Yep.
talking to the obstetrician that I had. They're sort of a part, obviously a huge part of it, but they're not sort of the rule of the room. So
Not the boss.
yeah, they're not the boss of the room, which I didn't know. So the anaesthetist we had was sort of like the head of anesthetics at the hospital, and he was amazing. So he actually came up to me the morning of and looked me in the eye and said, "I'm really sorry that you're in this situation. My daughter had a home birth. We're going to look after you the best we can." And that was honestly the best thing that could have happened to me in that morning. I felt really supported and cared for in that moment, especially, like a 50-year-old man. You have sort of bias over maybe people in the hospital that they don't really understand home birth and all of that type of thing. But I did feel really supported in that moment, which really helped the day.
That's great. Beautiful. And do you want to just talk through what that looked like when you turned up and that process of getting ready for the caesarean, the steps that you had to go through, just so that women can have a really clear understanding of what an elective caesarean can look like and feel like?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the days leading up, we really tried to change our mindset and be as positive as we could, because I knew that, bringing negativity into my birth was not going to help me. I still probably didn't really admit to myself what was going on. I think I was in a bit of la la land. But the day of, walked in with my husband, and it was a very calm experience, really. It's quite surreal knowing that you're going to meet your baby soon. So I went up to the birthing ward and then got sort of prepped there. And that's when the anaesthetist came and said hello and said, "I've read your letter and we're going to make it as nice as we can. Baby can have skin to skin, and we'll do everything that we can." So that was really nice. And then you're sort of waiting a little bit. Then they wheel you to theatre. And from there, it is quite a surreal experience in the sense that you have so many people in the room. They're introducing themselves. And, I can see how, because they've done it a million times, they can become quite sterile to it. And for you, it's your birth, and it can feel quite clinical. They were all lovely, but I can imagine if you had staff that were talking about their weekend, that would feel very strange and odd, because you're about to go through birth and they're just sort of doing what they do every day. So yeah, lots of people all introducing themselves. Obviously, my husband was scrubbed up. And then it's sort of that anticipation of getting on the bed, getting the spinal, making sure all of those things are working nicely. And it really is a mix of like so much medical, but it's so emotional. I felt they did a really nice job of caring for me and supporting me. And there's a video of when my daughter actually gets pulled out, and the anaesthetist that there was two. There was like the head, and then there was another one. And he was like rubbing my shoulder as she came out, and I didn't feel it at the time, but just those little acts of kindness. Like I look at that video and it makes me emotional, because it's so sweet that he was like there for me. And, just this random person I'd never met, was there at the birth of my daughter, and offering me care. So I guess my point is, just because you're having a cesarean doesn't mean that it's like not emotional and beautiful in its own way. And for me, I definitely, felt supported by the staff around me. Yeah, that was a very quick 30 minutes of basically getting her out, and those legs were right up there. Her cord was actually around her neck a couple of times, and she was extremely high up. So you can never really know. My gut says I don't think it would have been a successful vaginal breech. That's what my gut says. I'll never know. So yeah, all successful in terms of that. And then thankfully, the neonatal doctor was very on board with me having skin to skin, which felt really good. The fact that I felt like I didn't need to fight for that. She was great. Sophie got put straight on me, and yeah, it was still a nice moment, but it is different to a vaginal birth. When you've had both, you can compare, and it still feels, your body feels awkward, and it's surreal.
Yeah. Did you get delay cord clamping at all?
Yeah, they were fine with that. I can't really remember how long. I think they just sort of left it as much as they could, as much as their policies and comfortability allowed them. And it was quite a calm birth still. I had music, obviously my midwife next to me, my husband. So yeah, I definitely can't say that there was anything about the cesarean that felt not good or made me feel icky. It was all, nice people around me, and that really helped, I suppose, process the fact that this was something I didn't want but ended up having, and made the best of what I could.
Yeah. And did Bob stay with you for that entire time while they stitched you up?
So she was on me for a bit, but it's as much as, it sounds beautiful having skin to skin as soon as you've had a cesarean, I probably underestimated how awkward it quite is, because they have to be quite high up. So it wasn't long until my husband took her, and I was fine with that. I felt a little woozy because of all the medications. So then they were trying to fix all that, making sure that I wasn't going to vomit, because I felt like I was. So yeah, she got taken with my husband, and it felt very fast. Yeah, you sort of blink and you miss it, but I definitely didn't feel like I was separated from her for a long time or anything like that. My husband definitely had her, and then I think it wouldn't have been too long that we were sort of reunited in recovery, and she was given straight back to me. So I was fine with that.
Okay, so he went out with baby. Is that right?
Yeah, it wouldn't have been for too long though. Yeah, so he went out, and my midwife stayed with me, and then
Okay.
all reunited in recovery.
Yeah. And how did that breastfeeding look in recovery?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. She latched, which was nice. Yeah, that was all fine. We sat there for about an hour, and it was so surreal, because my first birth, a vaginal birth, it was, sometimes I think you look at a vaginal birth as like a bit of a gold standard. But when I reflect on both my births, that hour after, I could not, because of the trauma that I'd just gone through, I said, but I need my baby away from me right now. Versus my cesarean, I was so present and with it that didn't happen. So that was nice for me, because of my last experience, being able to just be with her and be really present, like completely present, versus a vaginal birth where you probably haven't slept for a couple of days, and all of those feelings are, you're just completely wiped. This felt different because I'd been rested from the night before. It was only probably within an hour that the pain probably really took my breath away, and that was probably the next phase for me of trying to manage having a new baby but being in quite a lot of pain.
And so then you went to the ward, I'm assuming. And how long were you at the hospital after birth? Were there any issues postnatally in those first few days with breastfeeding or your body or anything?
Yep. So we went up to postpartum that evening. So it would have been like dinner time. My husband, at that particular hospital, they can stay the first night as long as there's like a pull-out bed. He asked for one and they couldn't get one. I think they were very busy and it sort of got lost. He asked for another one. They said they'd get it. They didn't. So then we got to a point, I'm like, well, we have another son. You can't sit on a chair and sleep. And she wasn't sleeping. So we were sort of tossing up of like, okay, are you going to go home? And I was getting really upset because I was in so much pain and I felt like they were so busy, but I didn't feel right letting my husband sit in a chair all night. I know I've just given birth, but it just didn't feel right in that moment to just, I said, go get a couple of hours and come back. As he left, thankfully, someone saw him and got him a bed, thank God, because my daughter did not sleep all night at all. She just kept making noises and we got no sleep. 4 a.m, a midwife came in and took her for an hour, which we were very thankful for. An hour later, we'd had 1 hour of sleep. She came back and said, oh, I've done a blood test without my consent. And I do feel a bit funny about that. But
on baby?
Yeah, on baby, yeah. Done a test and she's high levels of jaundice. And she's just gone, we have to take her to the neonatal ward right now.
Do you know what sort of test? I'm guessing it was just a screening on the forehead with that one when they checked the bilirubin, but still it should have been done with consent, not without.
Yeah, now that you say that, I didn't really ask. It might have been a screening test. To me, it sounded like a more invasive test too. I was like, what do you mean you've tested her? And
there's a screening that we can do. It's a bit like your thermometer, like the ones that you hold on the forehead, that you can test bilirubin. So where the baby just looked jaundiced and she thought, I'll just do a quick look. But still, it was non-consensual, so shouldn't have been done. Otherwise, there is a blood test that can be done, and that's invasive.
I feel like she did do the blood test because I think what they saw was, because it was within 24 hours of the birth, that's not normal when you have jaundice. It's what I've heard. It's like pathological jaundice versus physiological. So I think that's why they were concerned. So I think it actually was the blood test due to the fact it was within 24 hours.
Yeah, okay. I want to make it very clear to anyone listening that still doesn't warrant doing it without the parents' consent. Just make that very clear.
Yeah. I was upset and, you know, you leave and you're like,
I
I'm
can
going to
imagine.
complain, and then life goes on. I was upset. I thought, excuse me, you know, and her manner was awful. You could tell she just didn't really want to be there. And then, yeah, luck of the draw, I had to have her. So she came in, said, yeah, we've done a test and she needs to go to neonate. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, the way she delivered it was very matter of fact. And I said, well, I need someone to come explain this to me right now, because I was so tired. So she got a doctor to come, and he explained that any baby that has signs of jaundice within 24 hours of birth, it's not normal. And it typically means that you and baby have different blood groups. And obviously you'd be more understanding of that. I have a basic level of obviously what we dealt with, but it's not considered normal, and we need to get her under light ASAP and see what's going on here. And her levels were high. They were just under a blood transfusion. So it was sort of, let's get this moving, which was awful. It was a lot.
Yeah. And so went to the nursery. Did she end up needing a blood transfusion, or did she just have the lights?
So went to the nursery, and when you've just had a cesarean, it's not like you can just waddle behind. That part was really hard. I had to wait for someone to come take me. My husband had to leave because we have another son and not a lot of family to help at that time. So he left. I had to get someone to wheel me down, and she was covered in the lights. And then it was sort of asked, well, did you have this with your other son? Because normally, from what I understand, if you have different blood groups, the first baby might not be as bad, but subsequent babies can be worse. So he did need, my first son was under the lights for 24 hours, but I think it just got lost in translation, and I never really knew what that meant. So I never really passed that on to my midwife, and I don't think she got my notes from my first birth. So I think it got lost along the way.
Did your first son need it within the 24 hours as well, the lights?
I remember there was like a thing where they came and they said, you should have had anti-D shots or something like that. And they didn't tell me what that meant. So he had lights, but not
You've
long.
got a negative blood type?
Correct, yeah. It was all very confusing, and I don't feel like I was explained it properly the first time. Then the second time, obviously, I paid the price of not really understanding it the first time, because I would have had anti-D shots in my subsequent pregnancies.
But not doesn't mean that can occur. It's usually incompatibility. So it's not necessarily because you didn't have it in pregnancy or anything.
Yeah, I was trying to get my head around it, because obviously when you think of jaundice, you think of like the, you know, little yellow, it's gone to the lights for a bit and all is well. But for this, it's quite different. It's a bit more serious, and needs a bit more treatment. I was just trying to wrap my head around what was going on, and it was awful. Yeah. It was not nice at all. It was so hard to have your baby taken away from you.
And that would have impacted your breastfeeding, I'm sure. How did that go for you?
It did. So I guess for anyone that's not familiar with like pathological jaundice, is essentially every few hours you're having a test to see where the bilirubin levels are at. And the only way to get bilirubin out is for milk and for them to drink. The thing with breastfeeding, what they made it sound like is like we really need to flush this out. So while I was feeding a lot, there were times where I consented for a formula bottle as well, just to try and move things along as quickly as we could. But it did then impact, because her test results were to the point where she needed to go into full lights. I couldn't hold her, feed her. It was literally 24 hours of her in there. And that was probably the worst day of my life. It's so hard to explain. Yeah, anyone that's had a NICU baby, and like ours was short-lived, it is just so painful to have a baby that you can't hold and touch, regardless if it's a day or 3 months. It's just awful. That was just something I can't really explain, the sadness I had by looking at my baby with these little sunglasses. It just felt so unnatural. I was so unprepared for her to be taken, and then to be told I couldn't even hold her or feed. And then you got all the hormones running through you. So it was very difficult, and definitely impacted breastfeeding a little bit for the start. Like, she fed well, but yeah, of course, it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to be tucked in at home and have my baby on me for days in bed, not in a little incubator with sunglasses. So it was really hard.
Yeah, very big contrast to your original expectation and plan.
Yeah, for sure. And it took me, I just felt like I kept getting kicked. You look back, it was, a year ago now, and at the time it was so consuming, and I felt like forever. Obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, it was a short time, but it was so intense at the time.
Yeah. And so did you get discharged before baby, or did you go together?
No, so that was another thing. So they discharged me after 2 days. And I know everyone's really different with the pain, but I was really, really struggling. Probably made worse by the fact that I had to keep walking a lot, getting up and down, sitting next to her in the nursery in a very uncomfortable chair. After 2 days, they said, you need to go. And I said, well, so you're expecting me to either come back here every 3 hours to feed, because breastfeeding was extremely important to me, or you want me to sit next to her in a chair while I've just had major abdominal surgery. Like, can you just give me another day? I was not granted that and told, basically get out. And that was awful too. I just thought, I'm in so much pain. My daughter's in the NICU and I have to go. And there was not a lot of compassion there. It was like, no, your time's done. We need to move you along. So I was discharged, and within a couple of hours, the NICU actually set me up to pull out bed so I could stay one night in there. But for your recovery for a caesarean, it is not ideal. I was still very thankful, so thankful that I could do that. But my goodness, that did not help my recovery whatsoever. So she was in there for about probably 5 days.
Yeah, okay. And how were you going with expressing breast milk? Were you getting enough? Did it take a bit of time to build that up?
Thankfully, I've always had both times really good experiences with breastfeeding and good supply. So that was all fine. Because we were trying to flush her out as much just for my recovery, I couldn't be there all the time. And during that time, if we didn't have enough, they would give her formula. I just sort of assumed once she was at home that we could fix that up. Probably didn't go quite that way. She definitely got a bottle preference, and that was hard. What I thought would happen versus what actually happened was not the case. She really did get that bottle preference, unfortunately. So we had to work really hard at our breastfeeding journey when we got home.
What was the travel time for you going to the hospital from home?
It's only about 15 minutes, thankfully. So not too bad.
Oh, that's good.
So I was there most of the day. It was just the nighttime. Again, when you've been cut open and you're in so much pain, I had to take care of myself as well. Yeah, I had to get some rest and some relief from the pain by not moving all the time. Unfortunately, it didn't end up going that way. I did end up with an infection on my scar, and I do believe it was because I didn't have enough time to lay down and rest. It was it was quite intense time.
So when you finally got to bring her home, what did that look like when you came home? Did you have your midwife come and see you there? And how long did you feel it took to establish that breastfeeding and eliminate the bottles?
Yeah, my private midwife is so amazing through all of this. She came to the hospital most days to see me, and she actually advocated for my daughter to get discharged with what she had. Jaundice, you needed to be under a certain level for a certain amount of time, which she did. And that's another thing with the jaundice. It was such a mind game. So for that week, she would drop, we'd have like 2 good results, and then it would peak. You're like, oh, 2, I just need 1 more. And then it would go up. So that happened to me probably 2 or 3 times where I'd go in the morning and they're like, oh, no, not today. So it was an emotional back and forth. So my midwife really supported me through that. She advocated for her to go because she had the ability to do the testing rather than having to do it at hospital. So they were happy with that, and that just was so good for me just to have a little bit of support in that matter and have someone at home that I knew could monitor her and make sure that she felt comfortable as well. And we just spent the time trying to reestablish breastfeeding. And I did feel like breastfeeding the second time round was tricky with having another child as well, because I was not at the very start, but running around after him as well. So I do believe that week led to us probably relying on more bottles than I would have liked. We still had a good breastfeeding journey, but it definitely was a lot harder for her to take the breast. And I think that was a result of that first week.
Yeah. How long did you end up breastfeeding
We
for?
breastfed for about 8 months, which was similar to my son.
Great.
It was probably mixed feeds towards the end more, but I felt happy with that. That felt good for me. And I feel really grateful that I didn't have any huge breastfeeding issues myself. It was just a result of the hectic week that we had.
Yeah, absolutely. Considering the beginning that you had, you did amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was happy that we got some sort of journey together for sure.
And what kind of support did you have postnatally? Obviously, you had your midwife and your partner. Did you have anything lined up? Had you cooked meals to make that period easier? What did you do?
And loves cooking, so he was happy to sort of do that role. Probably didn't set up a lot in terms of that type of thing. I think my husband having flexibility in his role, I felt comfortable that we would manage as a family. Except we were also moving house at the time, so I had to keep that into consideration. In terms of I knew that it would be hectic and I wouldn't have that really blissful postpartum first few weeks until we were settled in our house. With what I was going through at the time, I have like a small little like community on Instagram, and I was sharing my journey at the time, and the women that came forward during that time was so lovely. I ended up using an Adelaide doula who came over and just like brought food and held space, which was really lovely. I had another doula who cooked food. I said, yep, let me buy a package. It will just make my life a bit easier at the moment. I did it more on a whim than I did like in terms of preparation. The women that came forward were so lovely, and I felt really supported by my community during that time because they knew like what I'd wanted, and then caesarean, and then the jaundice, and then the infection. It was like one thing after another. So yeah, thankfully being in the world of birth, you are surrounded by like really beautiful humans and women that, get it.
Yeah, that's great. Did you do a birth debrief or anything with anyone at the hospital or with your midwife?
The thing about me, Sasha, is I talk to anyone that will listen. So I debrief with everyone.
So many.
I debrief with my Instagram. I think I am a natural talker, and that is how I process things. So I didn't really feel like I needed one person in particular. I talked to my midwife, and she was amazing. We were talking through it a lot. But yeah, I think just being that type of person, I don't bottle things up at all. I'm more like a heart on my sleeve type of person. So everyone sort of knew how I felt at all times. And there was probably no worry that I'm bottling things up. I did reach out for help with our friends and family because we were moving house, and that was a lot. Trying to, hold space for what was happening at home and myself and my daughter. And probably, the relationship between me and my husband, it was so divide and conquer at that time. I was going through something so emotional with my daughter, and, as probably a lot of women out there know, like the relationship with their babies probably happens a little later, like that real intense love versus like newborns can be a bit not as interesting for them, I suppose. Of course, he loved her deeply, but, he had my toddler to look after, and that was like his role.
Yeah.
And my role was to be there for my daughter. But then I also needed my husband, but he was tied up with our son. So it was a hard dynamic during that time.
I think the toddlers are what get underestimated when a new baby comes along. They've got a lot of energy.
Yeah, they do. And I sort of struggled with my son around that time because I came into the hospital once. He's a 3-year-old. Like he had high energy, and I just was not about that. I was highly strung, very upset. So I actually said to my husband, I'm just going to need to park our son for a bit because I can't give him anything right now. You can give him everything he needs, and they have a beautiful bond. But yeah, that energy of a 3-year-old was just not what I could deal with at that time. That didn't make me feel good at all. You need to be there for both your kids. But I had to be honest that, I can't be around crazy baby right now, which toddlers, that's what they do. That's who they are. So
yeah, there's no off switch.
No, they don't understand. That was a hard time emotionally. Yeah, I needed my husband, and my son needed him too. And that, that was just the way it was.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there any resources, advice, or wisdom that you would like to share with anyone listening right now?
When I was going through my Breech journey and wondering what I'd do, there was, so many good Facebook pages. There was a group, so Breech Babies. And to me, connecting with other women that had gone through what I went through was really helpful. And I think part of the reason I'm passionate about sharing my story was there's definitely like a gold standard or a birth that is highlighted on social media. And with the breech thing, I would notice a lot of people would send me home birth breech stories, and that was all well and good, but 99% of them was surprise breech. Versus when you find out, it's a lot harder to then make that decision because you know the risk, even though that's not to say there's not risk for cesareans, of course, but, with the way the medical staff scare you of the risks and what the risks are in terms of entrapment and stuff can sound very terrifying. So it's not easy to then just ignore all that, even though the risks are small and the right provider, it can be fine. So connecting with other women that had gone through that was really helpful. I think if you have had a breech baby before, you know how hard those weeks are where you find out their breech and just craziness that you go through. Facebook groups, podcasts. I would just search breech and come up with stories. I would search home birth, hospital. I probably read every single breech story when I was trying to make my decision on what I should do next. So I think, social media is just so good for that. I guess not everyone might want to do that. People might want to just ignore the noise. I am probably someone that invites noise. So, I put it on my social media, which created a lot of people messaging me saying, I knew XYZ, and gave me points of reference to help me make my own decision. But everyone's really different, I think, with when it comes to their decision making and how they like to absorb information.
Knowing what you know now and having the experience that you've had, would you do anything differently?
I don't think so. I felt in my gut that it was the right thing to do. I'm glad that I made the decision to have an appointment with the hospital and ask questions. I think I would have regretted if I just took it straight without asking questions. I think that really helped me be like, well, I did what I could and I didn't just be like, arms up, okay, cesarean. I did a little bit and then I would flip and then I'd go the other way. Having a private midwife is worth its weight in gold. So even if you don't have a private midwife the whole time during your birth, I believe many do like one-off consultations or can be a really good sounding board for you. So that really, really helps me as well, having my midwife who supported whatever decision I had to make. Yeah, she wasn't biased. She just gave me the facts and the guidelines and the policies and the evidence around it. So that really helped because that took a lot off my shoulders of having to find that information. Yeah, in terms of like the support I had around me, that having a private midwife and the questions I asked and how she facilitated things, I don't think I would do things differently. It was what it was. She's a feisty little girl, so it makes sense that she was ready to not go head down like she should have. It really depends on when you find out your baby's breech, to what you can do about it. Someone that finds out at 35 weeks has a little bit more leeway than someone that, finds out 2 weeks sort of prior to their due date. So you have to be proactive, I suppose, and just sort of sift through the information. And there's lots out there, thankfully, to help you make a decision or just get your head around it.
Thank you. Did you feel empowered with your decision?
I did. Yeah, I believe I did. Towards the end, I felt writing that letter, was therapeutic. I felt I weighed up what I felt comfortable with. And I would never judge someone that had a vaginal breech birth at home ever. For me, it wasn't something I felt comfortable with. So I had to weigh up, okay, well, if I'm not comfortable with that, what's my next option? And it was like a process of elimination. But everyone's really different with their limits, and women should birth however they feel comfortable. In other states, there's a lot more breech providers that are trained. We actually don't have a lot in SA, which doesn't make it easy. When you're getting told no, we're a bit, worried, that impacts your decision. So
thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been really nice to just get a bit more of a positive perspective on having an elective caesarean for a breech baby. So I think this will be really helpful for women listening.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing and highlighting my story. You don't often hear of the elective caesarean approach, so I really hope that someone else that listens to this can feel less alone and more empowered in their decision, because, there is beauty in feeling confident about your decision. And although a caesarean was not what I wanted ever, I do feel like I did what I could to make an informed decision at that time. So thank you so much for letting me share my story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Breech Birth podcast. These stories matter. They stretch what we think we know and bring voice to experiences that need to be heard. I'm so grateful to the women who have shared their experiences with us, raw, real, and full of wisdom. If this episode resonated with you, please follow, share, or leave a review. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Breech Birth Podcast. And if you have a breech story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, may we continue to reclaim the narrative, one story at a time.